All right, my friends, let's take a look. So for A, you can see the p-value is 8. And so the question is it on the right side of 1 for this thing to converge? And so I would say that in this case, this rule right here would go to 0. Basically, you just want it to go to 0 faster than 1 over n. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so in this case, we would say that this one converges. And then if anybody asks how come, you could say by the p-series test. You just leave it at that. Another way to say the same thing, which I actually prefer, is for you to say that this is convergent. And then you could say it's a convergent p-series. And then you could just say because, p is equal to 8. Or you could say, that your p-value is greater than 1. So hopefully that makes sense. I honestly prefer the second one. It's faster and is a little more specific. Okay, for part B, the first thing I would do is make it look more like a p-series. So this is the sum as n goes from 1 to infinity of n to the 1/3, which is the same as the sum as n goes from 1 to infinity of 1 over n to the negative 1/3. And so your p-value this time is negative 1/3, which is less than 1. And so less than or equal to 1, that is. And so I would just say that this is a divergent p-series. And in particular, your p-value is negative 1/3. So for me personally, it was easier to visualize that this thing would diverge just with it the way it was. Like I know what a cube root graph looks like. And I know if you add up, infinitely many of those terms that aren't even going to 0, then you'll definitely have something divergent. Anyway, that's another argument that you could give instead of a p-series test on this one. If it makes sense to you to use an nth term test for divergence argument, then you could have done that as well. Since the directions didn't say you had to do it any certain way, you could have shown, that this approaches infinity, which is super duper not 0. And then that would mean that the sum of all the terms diverges. And then that was by the nth term test for, that's right, divergence. Now, it's about now that my students start asking me, do we really have to say the argument part? And that is, my friends, the most important part to practice. The hardest part to get down and the most important part to practice. They're not going to care. I mean, if they're not going to make you questions on the AP exam where you just get to say converge or diverge, they're just not. They're going to ask you how come, and they're going to want an argument. Okay, so for part C, let's look at that one. I would probably use a p-series argument for this one. So E is approximately 2.718. And so, would this function rule have terms that go to 0 fast enough? I say yes. And so I would personally say that this is convergent. It's a convergent p-series. In particular, your p-value is equal to E, which is approximately 2.718. There we go, my friends. So try to look out for the p-series ones because those are way easier. You don't have to do the full-blown integrals. And then the ones that you couldn't use a p-series test on, then you could go ahead and do the full-blown integral test on. Hopefully this goes well. Take care, everybody.